Mr. Owl, how many times is Peyton gonna make a video on Mario 2 until he's finally happy with it? Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
No, I haven't ran out of ideas, and no, I haven't lost my mind. It's just that my previous 2 videos on Super Mario Bros. 2 do the age-old tradition of being Mama Luigi content made before my Earthbound Beginnings remake, and as a result, kinda suck ass.
Peach received a full facial reconstruction surgery before the final game got released, and the squatting sprite is virtually unrecognizable from the final.
Woo! That's so funny! I'm gonna need facial reconstruction surgery too! Right after I get done bashing my skull in!
Other than being horribly unfunny, the greatest sins of these old videos are the fact that I didn't fully cover everything that there was to discuss. I skipped over discussing the differences between Doki Doki Panic and Super Mario Bros. 2. So today I'm gonna right my wrongs and discuss most of the differences between the 2 releases.
Oh, you know, solely out of my passion for documenting these types of things.
Threats of violence aside, you might think that to take this game, which was originally released as a promotional piece for a Japanese festival, and make it fit within the Mario universe would necessitate a plethora of changes. Well, surprisingly enough, there aren't nearly as many differences as one may expect for 2 reasons. For one, Doki Doki Panic was designed in a very similar way to how the first Mario game was. You progress, usually from left to right, this time with the addition of vertical movement, to reach an end goal. While this might sound reductive, and to a certain extent I guess it is, since with this style of argument someone can say that Doom and Postal are essentially the same games, it was clearly a sentiment shared by Nintendo internally. The general idea was, since the lost levels wasn't appropriate for a Western market, how about we take this game, that due to the licensed characters, would never be released overseas in its original form, give it a new coat of paint, and call it a day. It was an incredibly effective use of resources. This way the international market gets their Super Mario Bros. Sequel, meanwhile it's built off a pre-existing game, meaning it would be both cheaper to produce, and quicker to get into customers' hands. Secondly, the rules of the Mario canon were hardly defined back then. You could throw a mushroom cap on just about anything and the damn thing would fit right in. Master Chief? Boom. Master Stool. Dwayne Johnson? Excuse me, I think you mean Dwayne Shroomson. Osama bin Laden. The canon for sure had its rules, but they were so ill-defined at the time that changes one might expect, such as altering the enemies to have sprites that match foes from the original, didn't happen since the world was still trying to find a concrete identity for itself. As a result of this, lots of aspects of Doki Doki Panic were simply seniored in to become Mario series staples. Shy Guys, Birdo, Bob-ombs, and plenty of other iconic series characters and iconography made their first appearances here. Obviously, when making this title into a Mario game, the first and most important thing to do is to replace the original playable characters, Imogen, Lena, Mama, and Papa, with ones from the Mario series, being Mario, Peach, Luigi, and Toad respectively. Aside from Luigi, whose higher jumping ability was first introduced in the Lost levels, this is where each character got their unique traits. Peach can float, meanwhile Toad is the fastest and strongest, each of which are traits seen throughout their future appearances in Mario titles, particularly in Super Mario 3D World. I'd argue that even Mario got his traits of being an all-arounder here too, since him being an all-around good pick wasn't really clear until he had to compare himself to Mary Poppins, Apollo 13, and Barry Allen. I mean, compared to these sons of bitches, Mario sounds almost underwhelming. Each character kept their DDP counterparts' traits, with the sole exception of Luigi. He had his jump tweaked ever so slightly to be just a smidge higher than what Mama was capable of doing in the original release. Beyond the characters, another thing that was altered between releases was the music. There are a few notable examples of music being changed in its entirety between releases. For instance, despite the Starman being in both releases of the game, being put into Doki Doki Panic as an homage to the Mario series, the item originally didn't use the iconic Starman jingle, opting for this tune instead. Some other examples of song being replaced in their entirety is the original title theme, which was actually rearranged to become the ending theme in the international release. And the subspace theme, that was changed to distance itself from the original Arabian Nights inspiration.
Those are the most significant and well-known examples of songs being altered between releases. However, if you're anything like me and you're incredibly familiar with the Mario 2 soundtrack, you might notice that the DDP versions sound, well, kinda like ass.
Listen to the overworld theme, for instance. Everyone knows how it's supposed to sound. It's one of the most well-loved songs in the entire series. Now, take a listen to the original version from Doki Doki Panic. It feels empty, almost unfinished. God, don't even get me started on the underground theme either. It is royally botched in the original release. It's like a chocolate egg, right? The hollow ones are great. I mean, it's chocolate. It's gonna be good no matter what, you know, short of someone taking a fat dump on it. But I think I speak for everyone when I say that they're better with a filling, whether it be caramel or that weird orange shit in Cadbury eggs. The original renditions are missing the filling. This also applies to the standard stage boss theme, which is the most similar sounding song between versions. As well as the Wart Battle theme, which aside from the underground theme, probably suffers from the saucelessness the most. Aside from music, there are several changes relating to the game's story. The original game story is pretty apeshit, so I'll give you a rundown. There are these two kids named Picky and Pokey and a group of people called the Moo. The Moo were able to control both the weather and dreams, you know, kinda like the government. And one day, PP were reading a book about them and their history. The Moo built this machine called the Dream Machine, which produces good dreams, until one day this evil bastard named Wart shows up and decides he wants to use the Dream Machine to spread nightmares, you know, because he's such a jerk. In response to this, the Moo people begin searching for Wart's weakness and how to best defeat them. And one day they just figured, you know, he's a bigger fella, he probably hates his vegetables, and what the hell, they were right. So they kill the bastard, taking advantage of this weakness, and the Dream Machine is safe. Until one day while reading this book, Picky and Pokey decide to be twerps and get into an argument over, of all things, who gets to turn the damn page. And as a result, they end up accidentally tearing the page which details Wart's defeat out of the book. Through some weird-ass magic nonsense, since the page detailing his defeat was effectively destroyed, Wart has now come back to life and decides to abduct PP since they're the only two people who know of his weakness, pulling them into the book where he resides. What Wart didn't know is that there's this crazy funny monkey guy nearby named Rusa who witnessed all this shit transpire. So Rusa goes and hunts down a family of heroes to rescue Picky and Pokey and to defeat Wart once and for all. Meanwhile, in Mario 2, Mario has a fever dream, and that's pretty much it. I know you are all eagerly waiting for me to discuss the several sprite alterations found throughout the game. But before I finally get into those, I want to discuss gameplay differences. Even though DDP and Super Mario were both platformers who were pretty similar in terms of structure, style, and design, there were several changes made to how the game controls, how characters behave, and how game progression works overall. Aside from the previously mentioned detail, that Luigi's jumps make Mama look like a weak hamstring having bitch, The most significant change to character behavior comes down to the fact that in Doki Doki Panic, when the player was at 1 hit point, they didn't shrink. This was a behavior added in the conversion process to mirror the way Mario behaves in the original Mario game. Despite that though, unlike the previous Super Mario Bros. Titles, that's right, all 2 of them, when the player starts they won't be in their shrunken down form, instead being in their taller, for lack of better term, super form. That change, however, is mostly visual. There are occasions where the player's shorter stature comes in handy, but it doesn't affect gameplay in a really substantial way. You want to know what does affect gameplay in a substantial way? That the game originally didn't have a fucking run button. Yeah, that's like having a book without a spine. That's like having a sandwich with no bread. That's like having a social media platform with shitty moderation. Oh yeah, wait. The ability to run is an essential part of all platformers, and it being an addition made in the localization process made the game feel significantly faster. This, in combination with the fact that to truly beat Doki Doki Panic, the player had to beat each level with each character, made DDP quite the endurance test. This dumbass requirement was removed in the international release for what I feel like is a pretty obvious reason. Now, the final change I want to share before I get into sprite alterations has to do with them changing how something was animated. And before I show this, I need to give a legitimate epilepsy warning. This isn't a joke or anything. If you are sensitive to flashing imagery, I highly advise you either skip to this timestamp shown on screen, go watch another video, or if you really want to hear what I have to say so badly, then just hold your eyes shut or something, I don't know. If you're sticking around, I'd like to show you how the waterfalls look in Mario 2. Pretty calming and not potentially hazardous to epileptics, right? Well, let's see how it looked in Doki Doki Panic. What the hell? I don't think I really need to elaborate on why this was changed. Oddly enough, this version of the waterfall was still seen in an early prototype for Mario 2, meaning that this was a change likely made towards the end of development. Alright, you've all been waiting for it, so now I get to discuss the wild and wacky world of sprite alterations between releases. Special thanks to the Cutting Room Floor for having a very comprehensive article containing the changes between versions. So as always, please be sure to check their site out and consider supporting them if you like learning about this type of stuff. These changes vary wildly. They can either be the most minute bullshit or some pretty significant alterations. The most pointless change in my opinion would have to be the World 7 turnip having a redesign and localization make it look much fatter. Why? I have no idea, but it was a change made nonetheless. Several changes were just these inoffensive modifications made to distance the game's theming from Arabian Nights and the Mask Festival. For instance, these mask blocks were changed to become mushroom blocks. This magic lamp was changed to a magic potion. This mask at the end of stages was changed to become this horrifying bird creature that used to scare the shit out of me. And the one mask-related thing to remain in the localized release, Phanto, received a significant redesign to make him appear much more intimidating. There is, however, a single sinister change made in localization. Take a look at this.
Holy shit!
Now, surely I do not need to explain why this was changed, right? Right? And you guys want to know the craziest part? The sprite that replaced this in localization was the fucking Koopa shell. That's right. Some artist at Nintendo in the 80s heard that they needed an object that's pulled from the ground and when thrown, glides across the floor and was like, Fellas!
I got it!
I don't really think I need to explain why this was tasteless, but I would just simply like to ask, why the hell wasn't this a Koopa shell from the beginning? A lot of changes between versions really came down to giving items more, and in one instance, even less animation. The sphere that Birdo drops on defeat was originally a bland, totally static circle. Meanwhile, in the international release, they gave it this nice shining animation. The PAL block was given the scrolling animation, which looked super nice, and the grass was given a significant rework, being given both a redesign and new animations. The new color is probably given to make it stand out against the backgrounds of night-themed stages. The original version wouldn't blend in entirely, but I'd imagine if a player was just making a beeline to the end of a stage, they could become hard to spot. The Albatos was given the biggest glow up between releases, going from this shitty 2-frame animation to this really nice 7-frame animation. The sprite that received the biggest glow down is probably the treadmills found in Wart's Fortress. It comes down to preference, I suppose, but I personally think that the DDP version looks much nicer. There were a few more changes made to make the game fit more within the Super Mario Bros. Universe. First up, they replaced the heart item with a super mushroom. This is a very obvious change, no questions or explanations are really needed here. A more significant change has to do with the extra lives. In Doki Doki Panic, the sprite used actually changed depending on who the player's playing as. If you're playing as Imogen, then boom, up from the ground comes Imogen's bust. Same with Lena, then Mama, then Papa. These sprites were replaced by the iconic 1-Up mushroom. And while the depiction of the mushroom here is... let's just call it non-standard, it gets the general idea across well enough. One of the strangest changes has to do with the explosion sprite. They attempted to change it to fit better in with how someone would phonetically spell out the sound an explosion makes in the States. In the US, it's boom, but in Japan, it's bomb, with just one O. But for some reason, rather than just making it say boom, they threw in an extra B at the end? Yeah, no shit, that's a bomb. I just threw the damn thing. I'd be worried if it wasn't a bomb. Another strange change is that for whatever reason, in the localization process, they deemed the original tiles used for the Dream Machine to be unfit for an American release. So these got redrawn to look much flatter with no light reflecting off the tiles. The most overhauled aspect of the original game is easily the slot machine bonus screens found at the end of each stage. The original version looks hilariously bad, almost like a placeholder. When compared to the international release, which features this nice border as well as this really nice looking text at the top, yeah, it'd be an understatement to say that DDP's leaves much to be desired. The final change I'd like to discuss today involves the ending theme, which is actually what's playing in the background right now. When compared to the international release, the original ending theme is much more cheerful, which is a result of the game's endings having two totally different tones. DDP's is a celebration that Wart has been defeated once again, and for Picky and Pokey's rescue, whereas Mario 2's ending does feature the celebration and Wart getting an ass-whooping complimentary of the Subconians. It then has an extra scene showing that this adventure was all a dream within Mario's mind. It's got a more chill and laid-back sound to complement Mario being asleep. You know, it'd be pretty weird if party horns and the sort were going on with this image on screen. And that does it for all I care to discuss regarding the differences found between Doki Doki Panic and Super Mario Bros. 2. Now, there are some smaller level design changes I didn't really feel like mentioning. However, if that does interest you, my sources always are linked in the description below. So go and take a look for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and maybe consider subscribing if you'd like to see more stuff from me in the future. You know, if not, please let me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.